Hello everybody, I'm Kamaleao, and today I want to talk a little bit about Hearthstone, or the state Hearthstone is in right now, at least from my perspective. What is my perspective? I've been playing Hearthstone for quite a while now. I think I started somewhere a little bit before Naxxramas came out or something like that. And it's been one of my go-to games to play just whenever I had I have half an hour, quarter of an hour to kill, and why not play a round of Hearthstone? And as a result of that, I played Hearthstone almost daily. I think. Probably. More or less. So I played it a lot. I rarely played it a lot, at a time, so I never really grinded up on the ladder. I never played thousands of arenas in a row, but every day I just log in and play 2 or 3 games, and I really enjoyed that. Lately, that changed. I barely play it anymore, and almost always when I do, I feel like, why? Why am I doing this to myself? And the reasons are, well, there are multiple reasons. When it comes to Constructed, the wild format, I'm not even really going to talk about it. I mean, it's just, it doesn't feel nice at all. It feels extremely, I said this before the current expansion, before the standard and wild format were introduced, that I was afraid that wild would be quite unbalanced and as a result very, very much dependent on what cards you draw and when you draw them. Like Dr. 7 is still there, but Big Game Hunter now costs 5 mana, so you're one of the best counters to that, to a true card that was generally considered to be OP. And well, the counter was nerfed, the card itself not. So, no. I really, really don't like the idea or the state Wild is in. So, I played it almost not at all. When it comes to Standard, again, I said this before the expansion, that from the cards that had been revealed to be nerfed, or we knew were probably going to be nerfed, the cards that left the format, and from the cards that had been revealed, that I thought back then, okay, this is pretty bad, because control and mid-range, and like control-y mid-range, so the less aggressive deck types, they all lose a lot and gain little. And the aggressive decks, on the other hand, like not necessarily only face decks, but very, very aggressive decks, like the very aggressive zoo decks we have. Yeah, they control the board somewhat, but still, most games they want to end the game before turn 8 or something like that. And generally, they do. And I felt back then that those decks, they lost not that much. Very, very little, in fact. And they gained quite a bit of power with the new cards. Like, for example, Face Shaman with Flame Wreath Faceless and stuff like that. So more good overload cards for the damn Trog. And, I mean, it's a 7/7 for 4 mana. That's insane. So Standard, at the beginning of the expansion, Standard was a bit boring. Actually, it was quite boring, I thought, because almost everybody was playing Cthulhu decks for the first, I don't know how many weeks. Maybe it was only a couple of days, but at the beginning of the expansion, everybody was playing Cthulhu decks. And that was boring because you ran into the same deck all the time. But on the other hand, at least those decks didn't always want to end the game at turn 8. Those were games that lasted a bit longer, and as a result of that, you could play different decks, different ideas. You could try different ideas. I mean, I played a lot of games with different old god decks, like tried to make Yeshuraj work and everything like that. And that was fun. It could have been more fun if I hadn't always run into the same deck. But still, it was okay. So I kept on playing. But by now, everybody has realized that Cthulhu isn't that good. Old gods aren't that good. Control isn't that good. You just take lots of cheap early game minions and rush. And I'm then, of course, I don't have numbers because I don't play enough, and I don't competitively care enough about the game that I'd make any kind of statistics for myself. But I feel like I'm running into like 80% or more enemies who play extremely aggressive decks. Like almost Face Hunter, like the only change is that I now have that summon all 4 beast thingies at the same time card in there, and a little bit more mid-gamey cards, but generally they still do the same thing. They flood the board early on with aggressive minions and push the button and go into your face. There's tons of face shamans with tiny variations in between them. There is the what is it? The Warlock deck with, the 1/5 that gets the Darkshire Councilman. And that's another deck. I mean, it has, up to 15 1-drops in it? And that's the deck. And that's a deck that wins a lot. And the only face deck or non-zoo aggressive early game kill deck that I sometimes run into is maybe Tempo Mage with the Flame Wakers, but then again, that's not really that much different. It's also a very fast, very early game focused, early mid game focused and aggressive deck. And the problem is, for me at least, a lot of the interesting interaction cards, or the interesting combo cards where you can do funny and crazy things with, most of them are expensive. Like the old gods, if every game, or most games, don't last longer than turn 8, or are already finished by turn 8, or the victor is already very, very certain, then all those cards are completely pointless. And to me, that's very, very sad. And I don't like playing aggro decks. I don't enjoy playing against aggro decks. That has little to do with winning or losing. Even if I win, it doesn't feel like fun to me, simply put. You go in and when you win, it's like, yeah, okay, I won, but it's mostly up to draw luck against aggro decks, face decks. If I'm lucky and draw my early game counters, then I win. If I'm unlucky and don't draw them, I lose. And there's usually little I can do about it. And all those decks that I like to play, like with at least remotely themed decks, or decks that try mechanics and are a little bit more focused on mid to late game and a little bit more control focused, they are all completely useless. If you play them, you die. And that's far from interesting. And as a result of that, I don't really like playing Standard anymore. So there's not much left. Essentially, Tavern Brawl and Arena. Tavern Brawl, that always depends wildly on what's the current brawl. Some of them I really enjoy, others I really don't. For example, the Tavern Brawl where you take 2 cards in your deck and you only play with those 2 cards. It was a great idea, and like for the first hour or something that the brawl was out, it was fun because people were experimenting and trying new things and wacky things, and that's what I considered to be fun and interesting. And then everybody had just went online, read the cheese combos, and then you only played against the cheese combos. And the only way to not get crushed instantly was to play one of the cheese combos yourself. And that's not what I like. I know this is a competitive game, or what competitive may be the wrong... it is an esport, but I know that the goal of the game is to win, but in a game that has potentially such variety, to be completely forced to play one certain playstyle if you want to have a realistic chance of winning, I think that's very bad game design, to be honest. So yeah, I'm not that happy with the direction it has taken in this expansion. The next thing, or the last play mode for me, is Arena. And Arena is a bit problematic for me. I mean, on the one hand, Arena is more, or shows more of a playstyle that I enjoy, because Arena is a bit slower. It usually goes a little bit more into late game. Sure, there are some people who manage to draft very, very aggressive decks from time to time, but most of the time the games can be a little bit longer and can be a little bit more, well, tactical. You have more decisions to make when you actually have more mana to use and more minions to use, and instead of just, well, dump your head, go for face. I know that's not all that you have to do in an aggro deck, but it comes close. And when you only do that, you actually win quite a lot. But I also think that Arena has a serious problem right now. I mean, serious. I consider it to be serious. You might disagree. And that is... the variance in Arena is insane. At least from my point of view, it's insane. Because most classes right now have such a wide spread of extremely strong cards and extremely useless cards. And that quite often leads to, at least in my case, to the draw and luck in the draw, or in the draft, better say, luck in the draft, has huge impact, far more than before, or than like 1 or 2 expansions ago, on how I will do in that arena. Compared to before the current expansion, I am running like 2 or 3 win arenas far more often, so very low win arenas far more often. But at the same time, I'm running 7, 8 plus arenas far more often. So I almost never have an arena go like 5 wins or 6 wins. I almost always either drop out with 3 or less victories, or it goes like 8, 9, 10 wins. And I think the reason for that is that, well, the spread of how powerful cards has become very, very, very strong, or very, very big, however you want to say that. Let's take the Shaman, for example, because in the background I'm currently playing a Shaman arena. If you're playing Shaman, and you're lucky in your draw, and you get stuff like Flame Wreath, Faceless, Tunnel Trog, maybe a few weapons, then you're insane. Like Master of Evolution, there are there's a significant number of extremely powerful Shaman cards, and if you get them in your draft and get enough of them, I mean, I can play. I think I played that arena at the same time I was holding my phone in my other hand and trying to learn Spanish on an app, and it still went like 8 wins or something. So that's insane. But on the other hand, if you don't get them, if you don't get your Tusker Totemics, your Flame Wreathed Faceless, your weapons, your whatever,
greetings, friend.
It's so bad. You usually, or at least I usually, if I don't get those cards with Shaman, then I might as well just retire the deck, because I mean, I don't do that, but I pretty much know this deck is not going to go further than like 3 victories. And sure, I'm not the best player in the world, far from it. But still, I feel like it's not good to put that much emphasis on the draw and on luck on the draw. And we've had that problem before, especially with Warrior, where the Warrior was not played much because, well, or the reason why he was considered to be the weakest class in Arena was that he was way too dependent on the draft. Because before the expansion, when you were playing Warrior and you drafted a decent number of weapons and weapon supporting stuff and cards like that, Warrior was pretty good. I actually think that Warrior was one of the stronger classes if you got those cards. But if you didn't, Warrior was completely useless. And I think that problem has now spread to a lot of the classes, where there are specific cards which are insanely good in most of the classes. If you get them, you can just melt faces. If you don't get them, your face will get melted. And for me, that's... it doesn't feel like the way it should, I think. Because, sure, with a system like draft and random drafting, you will always have a bit of a variance in it, where some people will be lucky and get better cards to choose from, others will be less lucky and get worse cards to choose from, and that's okay. But I think the main reason for having a good deck or a bad deck should be your ability to draft a good deck, and not am I lucky and get offered enough Flame Wreathed Facelesses or whatever class card you want to talk about or you want to use in that example. I think there are more than enough. So I think it takes away some of the skill that was involved in Arena, and it was one of the more interesting parts, the deck building part for me, and in Arena, the drafting part. And now it feels more like, okay, I'm starting to draft, and even if I draft very well and draft in theory the correct deck and look at the mana curve and do everything as well as I can, and do everything well, not only as well as I can, but actually objectively well, there's still quite the high chance, or there's still the possibility that it will all be for nothing, because if I don't get offered at least a minimum amount of some of the cards that I consider to be, well, essentially OP, or well, some of the cards that are on the very high end of the power spectrum, let's phrase it like that. And if I don't get offered at least a minimum number of those, it'll be all for nothing. I can draft and choose cards as well as I can, as well as I want. It won't make a difference if I don't get some of the high power cards out of that, then I'll lose. And yeah, I don't think that that's a good thing. But you could obviously argue about that. Though I'd be interested. Other people have made the same kind of experience. I've watched some other people, the videos of some other people who on some level agree with that and say similar things, especially about ladder. And yeah, I think this is a problem and I'm not sure how to address it. I mean, what would I change to make it more interesting again? I think for Arena, you'd need to even out the cards a little bit more. You have to improve the bad cards, the really bad cards a little bit. And maybe tone down the very, very strong cards a little bit to even it out a bit so that the variance is not so huge anymore. So that it's not like, yeah, don't get offered those cards, too bad, you lose. Only get offered these shitty cards and you have to choose one of them, you lose. If that happens like more than once or twice. That would be my idea here. It's a obviously a very general idea. I have not like prepared anything about which cards, what would I do to which cards. Because, well, Blizzard's not going to listen to me anyway. And when it comes to standard, well, I'm not sure if just introducing specific cards would change anything. I would maybe think about tampering with the health pool and just give everybody more health, in addition to changing a few cards or adding a few cards that help the other decks, the non-aggressive decks, because the non-aggressive decks were already really, really struggling before this expansion, where they had far more tools and far more useful things to work with. And now they're completely dead. And I don't think that with one or two more cards they might be there again, but probably very struggling again. So I think you'd have to do more than that. And yeah, I would maybe play with the idea of upgrading, giving people more health, or giving every character like 10 armor at the beginning of a game or something like that, to just take the edge off all those aggressive decks. Well, that's my thoughts for now. I am Kamaleao, have a good time. If you have anything to add to what I said, there's a comment section below.